The moment I saw the yellow *** notice of eviction ** taped directly over the peephole of my front door, I knew the unimaginable had happened. I had been out of town for only 4 days visiting a sick friend, and in those 96 hours, my entire existence, the house my wife and I had raised our children in, the house that represented my retirement, my stability, my very roots, had been stolen out from under me. I ripped the notice off, my hands shaking so violently I could barely read the legal jargon, but the core message was brutally clear. The property had been sold through a rapid, non-conventional sale process, and the new owners would take possession in 72 hours. I immediately called my daughter, Jessica **, my only child, who had power of attorney over my finances since my small stroke 2 years prior. I tried to stay calm, demanding to know what catastrophic mistake had been made. Her response, delivered in a chillingly cold tone I'd never heard before, was the second hammer blow. Mistake? There was no mistake, Dad. The house was sold. We needed the money, and frankly, you've been living in a 5-bedroom mansion that was too much trouble for you anyway. I hung up, my mind reeling. I quickly checked my bank account online. It was empty. All the proceeds from the house sale, gone. I immediately drove to Jessica's suburban home. And that's where the third, most devastating shock hit me. When I pounded on her door, demanding answers, Jessica didn't invite me in. She stood on the threshold, arms crossed, flanked by her smirking husband, Mark **. And when I pleaded with her, reminding her that she had just made me destitute, she leaned forward and whispered the 5 words that instantly turned my world to ash, effectively ending our relationship forever. **, go find a shelter, homeless person. **, my own daughter, the child I had sacrificed everything for, the one person I trusted implicitly, had not only stolen my home and my retirement to cover her husband's crippling, secret gambling debts, but she had openly mocked me for the ruin she caused. The only way I could fight back was by revealing the hidden truth about her husband Mark, who held a secret that could destroy not only his career, but Jessica's future as well. Was I wrong to immediately begin plotting the ruin of my daughter's husband, even if it meant risking the complete and utter demolition of my entire family structure? Tell me if you would have swallowed the insult and the loss, or if you would have chosen calculated, catastrophic revenge. To truly understand the depth of this betrayal, and the reason I couldn't simply walk away and find a smaller apartment, you have to know the history of my family and the sacred promise Jessica destroyed. My name is Robert **, and I am 68 years old. My wife, Eleanor **, passed away 5 years ago after a long battle with cancer. The house, a beautiful, modest colonial built in 1955, was not just property. It was a testament to our life together. When Eleanor was dying, she made me promise 2 things. First, that I would never sell the house, which she called our fortress. And second, that I would always look out for Jessica, ensuring her stability. Jessica was our only child, and though she was always a little entitled, she had a good heart, or so I believed. My stroke 2 years ago was minor, but it spooked us all. Jessica insisted I give her power of attorney, arguing it would protect me from scams and make managing the property taxes easier. I agreed without a moment's hesitation, seeing it as an act of love. That trust became her weapon. The root of the problem was always Mark **, my son-in-law. Mark was a flashy, charismatic man who worked in high-level financial sales. He drove expensive cars, wore tailored suits, and seemed to constantly be on the verge of the next big deal. I always sensed a deep insecurity behind the facade. He was a professional risk-taker, and over the years I heard whispers, just whispers, that his deals often flirted with disaster, fueled by an aggressive gambling habit. Jessica, completely blinded by Mark's expensive lifestyle, always dismissed my concerns. "You just don't like ambitious men, Dad," she'd say. I loved Jessica, so I kept my mouth shut, hoping Mark would settle down. The financial collapse must have been sudden and total. Mark was facing a massive, non-dischargeable debt, likely from illegal sports betting or a terrible market loss. Jessica knew it, and instead of asking for my help, which I would have gladly given, she chose the path of ultimate betrayal. She used the power of attorney to execute a complex non-disclosure sale of my house, a process possible only through shady, high-speed brokers when a quick infusion of cash is needed to cover a huge liability. The amount of money involved was likely over $500, the equity I had spent 40 years building. The sale was illegal, but proving it would take months, maybe years, and tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees that I no longer possessed. Jessica knew this. She had not only stolen my home, but had strategically left me financially incapable of fighting back. The insult on her doorstep, "Go find a shelter, homeless person," was the final nail. It wasn't just a cruel phrase. It was a statement of victory, a cold, calculated dismissal of her father's life. As I sat in my old car that night, parked on the street a block from the home I no longer owned, staring at the dimly lit windows of my daughter's house, my grief turned into a terrible, burning resolve. I realized I was fighting not just for my money, but for my dignity and for the memory of Eleanor. I had to find a way to strike back at the true architect of this ruin. Mark. I knew one thing about Mark that Jessica did not. His deepest secret, a vulnerability that transcended money, marriage, and debt. I had discovered it accidentally 3 years ago. Mark, who was renowned in his field for being hyper, efficient, and always on top of his game, was not actually the brilliant financial mind everyone believed him to be. He had completely fabricated his past. His college degree, his early employment history, even his military service history, which he constantly referenced for prestige, were entirely fraudulent. He had used a complex web of deepfake documents and compromised university portals, likely orchestrated by a professional, to build his glittering resume. The real Mark had barely finished community college and had been fired from 3 previous low-level jobs for embezzlement, a history I found when I did a deep dive background check after he first married Jessica, driven by my deep unease about his character. I never told Jessica because I didn't want to destroy her marriage, hoping he would change. Now, that secret was the only weapon I had left. Exposing Mark wouldn't just ruin his career. It would bring down every fraudulent deal, every client relationship, and likely expose his huge, illegal debts. It would destroy the expensive, comfortable life Jessica had stolen my home to protect. So that's the situation I was in. I was an old man, newly homeless and penniless, living out of my car, with the power to deploy a nuclear option that would destroy my son-in-law, yes, but also utterly wreck my daughter's entire life and force her into the financial destitution she had so flippantly wished upon me. I was facing the agonizing choice between becoming a victim, swallowing the loss and the insult, or becoming the perpetrator of a devastating act of revenge that, while satisfying, would ensure I never saw my daughter again. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have prioritized self-preservation and walked away? Or would you have triggered the nuclear option to exact justice for your stolen life? Seriously, let me know what choice you would have made right there. I chose the nuclear option. The 5 cold words, "Go find a shelter, homeless person," had incinerated any shred of paternal love or duty I felt toward Jessica. She had signed her own termination papers when she chose Mark's debt over her father's survival. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about tearing down the monstrous edifice of deceit they had built with my life savings. My first move was to find a safe place to operate. I didn't go to a shelter. I drove an hour away and rented a cheap monthly room in a rundown motel, using the last few $100s I had kept in a separate emergency cash envelope. It was anonymous, quiet, and secure. Next, I went to work on Mark. I had kept digital copies of all the fraudulent background materials I found 3 years ago, archived deep on a separate, encrypted hard drive evidence I had intended to use only in case of a divorce. I spent the next 2 days compiling a dossier so comprehensive it was airtight. It detailed the fabricated degrees, the fake employment references, and the specific dates and names of the firms where he had been fired for embezzlement, providing contact information for the former CEO. Crucially, I added a note explaining that Mark's sudden, massive liability and the need for a non-conventional sale of my home were directly linked to his gambling and fraudulent lifestyle. I didn't send the dossier directly to the police or his current firm. I chose a far more surgical, devastating route. I identified Mark's single most important client a massive financial institution where Mark's sales performance was directly tied to his bonus structure and reputation. I created an anonymous email address, attached the full, encrypted dossier, and sent it directly to the head of compliance and the chief risk officer of that institution, with the subject line, urgent, fraudulent executive handling your $50 million account. I included a single instruction. The encryption key will be sent in 48 hours. The 48 hours were agonizing, but necessary. The delay forced the compliance department to panic. They knew they couldn't ignore an encrypted document about fraud involving a high-level executive. Exactly 48 hours later, I sent a one-word email with the decryption key. The results were instantaneous and catastrophic, far beyond my initial predictions. The moment Mark's firm and his biggest client decrypted the dossier, chaos erupted. Because Mark's work involved handling sensitive financial data and large investment portfolios, the massive client immediately pulled their funds, triggering an internal audit at Mark's firm. Within 3 hours, Mark was escorted out of the building, but it didn't stop there. The former embezzlement charges were suddenly relevant. Federal authorities were called in due to the scale of the financial misrepresentation and the potential risk to market integrity. Mark's entire career, built on a foundation of lies, was annihilated in less than a week. The fallout hit Jessica like a tidal wave. She called me, not to apologize, but in a hysterical rage, screaming about the FBI, the frozen assets, and the bank seizing their cars. "You did this. You destroyed us. We're ruined. Why?" I finally broke my silence. I spoke slowly, calmly, with the cold clarity of a man who had nothing left to lose. "Jessica, I didn't destroy you. You chose to destroy me by burying my wife's fortress and stealing my stability to bail out your liar of a husband. I merely introduced Mark to his own past." And then I delivered the final blow, throwing her own words back at her. "Now you and Mark can go find a shelter, homeless people." I hung up and immediately blocked her number, severing the last thread between us. The legal battle for the house was complicated, but no longer impossible. With Mark and Jessica's assets frozen, and Mark facing serious federal charges, which would eventually lead to a prison sentence, the broker who handled the illegal sale suddenly became very cooperative. The title was eventually restored to me through a combination of civil and criminal action, though the legal fees were crippling. The new buyers, who had been victims of the rush sale, were compensated out of Mark and Jessica's remaining frozen assets. Jessica was left financially devastated, divorced from a convicted felon, and facing the shame of being complicit in her father's ruin. She didn't go to a shelter. She moved in with a distant aunt. Utterly stripped of the lavish lifestyle she murdered my retirement to keep. I never saw her again, and I never will. I finally sold the house, not out of necessity, but to fulfill Eleanor's true intent, to ensure my financial well-being. I bought a small, modest condo in a warm climate, far away from the toxic remnants of my old life. I am alone now, but I am at peace. I live humbly, with enough to be comfortable, and every penny is clean. I may have sacrificed my daughter, but I reclaimed my dignity and honored my wife's memory by tearing down the lie. Jessica chose a temporary, luxurious life of deceit over her father's permanent security, and she paid the full, devastating price. The greatest victory was not the money, but the fact that I didn't end up a victim. I ended up the author of justice. Like this video if you think my calculated exposure of Mark was justified. Subscribe for more stories about family secrets and brutal consequences. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Do you think I should have at least told Jessica the truth about Mark before I exposed him to the world? I'll see you all in the next story.